Most people don't understand what real quiet is. They think it's turning off their phones or slipping into a hot bath. But real quiet, the kind that gets under your skin and settles in your bones, lives out here, where the map fades into trees, and the lake takes up more space than the town. That morning, the quiet was broken by the sharp click of heels on my front porch. I was still in my fleece pajama pants, holding a chipped enamel mug that had warmed my hands through 10 Michigan winters. The lake was misted in silver, the pine trees dripping dew. And then she arrived. Karen Langford, 50-something, sharp-featured, and always dressed like she was headed to a courtroom she intended to win. She never smiled with her eyes. Just the lips. A woman who thought every rule was a weapon, and every neighbor a potential defendant. "Mr. Maddox," she said, clipboard already in hand, voice flat as pavement. "You are currently occupying a structure designated as communal lakefront recreation property." I stared at her, then looked back at my porch. My rocking chair. The weathered fish plaques on the wall. The dog asleep at my feet, who lifted his head just enough to snort before settling back down. "You're gonna have to say that again," I said slowly, unsure if I was hearing her right. "This cabin," she said, gesturing with a sweep like she was unveiling a price on The Price is Right, was originally intended as a communal structure under the Lakeside Residential Integration Plan. As president of the Blackwood Waterside Homeowners Association, I'm here to inform you that your occupancy is in direct violation of Article 14, Section B. "Karen," I cut in. "Stop. Just stop." She raised one plucked eyebrow. "Excuse me? I own this cabin. I own the 50 acres around it. I own the lake. You're standing on my porch, holding a clipboard, on my property." Her face didn't change. She was good. I'll give her that. "We've updated the HOA boundaries. This area now falls under community designation. You should have received the notice in April." "No," I said, "because I'm not in your HOA. That's about to change." The absurdity of that sentence hit me like a cold slap. Karen didn't believe in private property. She believed in power that bled beyond its limits. She thought that if she said it with enough confidence, I'd pack a bag and leave. I took a slow sip of coffee, watching steam rise. "You think you're in charge here, don't you?" Her silence was answer enough. I pulled out my phone, opened my documents folder. "See this?" I tapped on a PDF. "Land deed. This cabin? In my name. So is the lake. So is the road you drove your Audi down. You want to talk jurisdiction? Your HOA office sits on land I own. The common parking lot? I rent it to the county for $1 a year." I let the words settle. Karen blinked once. Just once. Then turned and walked down the porch steps, heels clacking like retreating gunfire. Her clipboard stayed clutched in her hand. But her plan, whatever delusion she'd been spinning, had just hit a wall made of old pine and older money. I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. That night, as I grilled trout on the deck, 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled into the clearing. Lights on. No sirens. Just enough presence to set the mood. And there she was, standing beside them like she'd summoned the cavalry. Karen pointed at me the moment the deputy stepped out. "That's him," she said, voice a sharp staccato. "He's occupying a restricted structure. He threatened me. He refused to vacate communal space." The deputy, a man I recognized from the hardware store, looked between her and me. "Mr. Maddox," he said, carefully. "We received a call about a possible trespass situation." I nodded. "Good. You're about to solve it." He followed me into the cabin. I handed him a thick folder, the original deed, tax statements, and a copy of a recent land survey. He flipped through, whistled under his breath, then turned to Karen, who was still huffing like she was about to faint. "Ma'am," he said, tone now less servant of the law and more tired parent at a PTA meeting, "this is his land." "That can't be," she snapped. "I have the HOA maps. I have documents. Not the kind that hold up in court," he cut in gently. And unless you'd like to be cited for filing a false report, I suggest you stop harassing this man. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes, not embarrassment. Not humility. No, it was something worse. Rage. The quiet kind. The kind that brews behind fake smiles. She said nothing more. Just turned on her heel, got into her car, and sped off in a cloud of gravel dust. I stood on my porch, flipping a trout fillet, the scent of lemon and rosemary rising as the lake shimmered in the twilight. But I knew it wasn't over. Because Karen had tried to push the boundary line. And I just reminded her the whole board sits on my chessboard. The next morning, I found a pamphlet in my mailbox. Printed in full color, with embossed text, the front read, "Welcome to the new Blackwood Waterside HOA, Expanded Lakeside Community Plan." Inside, it was worse. There were maps. New ones. Hand-drawn. They showed my land, my entire property, reimagined as part of a Phase 3 lakeside residential commons. My cabin was now labeled as HOA Clubhouse/Wellness Retreat, the dock as Community Shared Waterfront Access, and, I kid you not, my garage had been rebranded as a future yoga and mindfulness studio. At the bottom of the page was a note in cursive font. Property participation expected by June 1st, or penalties may apply. Signed, Karen Langford, HOA President. It was May 31st. I called my lawyer. Her name's Alexis Tran, real estate litigator, a genius with boundary disputes, and the only person I know who's ever made a developer cry on a Zoom call. She scanned the HOA map and burst out laughing. "They drew fake parcels over your land," she said. "This is art. If they file this with the county, I want a frameable copy." "I think they already did," I replied, pulling out a folded letter I hadn't opened. It was stamped from the planning office. Inside, a notice of HOA expansion pending public comment. "Oh, they really want a war," Alexis said, cracking her knuckles. "And a war is what they got." Within 24 hours, Alexis filed a cease and desist against the Blackwood Waterside HOA, citing unlawful expansion, harassment, and public misrepresentation of private property. She also filed a formal complaint with the county board, triggering a review of every zoning map the HOA had touched in the past 2 years. Meanwhile, I made my own moves. Using the same mapping software the county used, I flagged every parcel I owned, from the lakebed to the access roads, and geotagged them with private, not under HOA jurisdiction. Then I uploaded them to the public land registry. Overnight, every GPS system updated with my boundary data. The next morning, something incredible happened. Karen's navigation system, and everyone else's who used HOA-issued GPS apps, suddenly treated their entire community as an inaccessible private tract. Her golf cart app wouldn't recognize the roads. Her delivery services stopped. Even the HOA's own internal traffic software began routing visitors around the lake entirely. I woke up to a phone buzzing with chaos. There were voicemails from panicked board members. "We can't schedule the June barbecue. The app says the park is inaccessible. Karen, the pest control guy, can't find the clubhouse. His GPS says it's off limits now. I tried to send flowers to my wife and DoorDash says we're in an unregistered zone." It was beautiful. I stood on my deck, sipping coffee, watching 2 HOA maintenance workers arguing on the shoreline. One of them pointed at the lake with a red-faced fury. The other shook his phone helplessly. I waved. And then came the cherry on top. The sheriff arrived. Same deputy as before, hat tilted, clipboard in hand, calm as ever. He knocked on my door and handed me a letter. "Karen Langford has filed a formal claim of land misuse," he said. "She's alleging interference with HOA function, disruption of public access, and emotional distress." I blinked. Emotional distress? She says the GPS outage caused her to miss her water aerobics class. I stared at him. He didn't smile. But I saw the twitch at the corner of his mouth. "Well," I said, "did she mention that I own the rights to the lake, the dock, and the road she drives on?" He tapped the clipboard. We pulled your file. And yes, she forgot to mention a lot of things. Then he handed me a second envelope, this one from the county planning office. It was an official rescindment of the HOA's expansion plan, with an attached penalty fine for filing false boundary information. Karen Langford and the Blackwood Waterside HOA had 30 days to provide corrected maps or face legal dissolution. Have a good day, Mr. Maddox, the deputy said, tipping his hat. I leaned on the doorframe, watching him drive off. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a battle over property lines. Karen wasn't trying to claim my land. She was trying to claim control. And unfortunately for her, she picked the one man who owned everything under her feet. I expected a war of paperwork. What I didn't expect was a press van on my front lawn. It showed up the day after the cease and desist hit the HOA office. A local reporter stepped out, mic in one hand, camera guy behind her, wearing a polite smile and a glint in her eye like she knew she'd stumbled onto something juicy. Mr. Maddox, she asked. Emily Caswell, Channel 8 News. We heard rumors about a private citizen reclaiming public HOA land. Would you be willing to go on record? I blinked. Reclaiming? I never lost it. She laughed, then got serious. We have footage of HOA President Karen Langford claiming your property as part of their Phase 3 expansion plan. She held a press briefing this morning. A press briefing? I let them set up on the dock. Sun glinting off the lake. My American flag flapping gently behind me. Bear, my dog, sitting at my feet like a sleepy bodyguard. I didn't say much, just laid out the facts. Deed. Survey. Ownership map. Cease and desist. By 6 p.m., my face was on every screen in the county. Local landowner outmaneuvers HOA president in viral property dispute. The story exploded. Within hours, the HOA's inbox flooded with angry emails. A satirical TikTok dubbed "Don't Mess with the Lake King" hit 3 million views by midnight. Someone even made a parody song, a country ballad called "Karen Don't Paddle Here No More." And that's when things broke. Karen called an emergency HOA meeting, a closed-door session meant to salvage what little control she had left. But nothing stays secret when the boardroom leaks like a fishing boat. A neighbor of mine, Grant, slipped me the recording. He'd accidentally left his voice memo app running during the entire 2-hour meltdown. Here are just a few choice quotes. This man is obstructing our community's progress. He's weaponized GPS systems, that's cyber warfare. We need to revoke his membership privileges. He's not a member, Karen, someone whispered. But the best part came from Linda, the treasurer, a silver-haired retiree who'd had enough. He owns the HOA building, Karen. The land lease expired 2 years ago. We never renewed it. We've been holding meetings on his property. Dead silence on the tape. You could hear a pin drop, or in this case, a power trip collapse. Karen, clearly rattled, started screaming about how I had tricked them, how I must have bribed county officials, how I was some kind of land baron running a conspiracy to sabotage wholesome suburban living. That's when the vote happened. And it wasn't close. By an 8-1 decision, the HOA board voted to suspend Karen Langford indefinitely, pending investigation. Her only vote? Herself. And just like that, the Queen of the Lake fell off her throne. But she wasn't done yet. Because desperate people don't go quietly. They go crazy. That night, I was reviewing footage from the trail cams I'd set up after the GPS incident. Mostly deer. The occasional fox. But then, around 2:13 a.m., I caught a figure creeping through the brush near my tool shed. Blonde hair. Pink windbreaker. Clipboard in hand. She paused at the edge of the dock, holding something up to the camera, a printed sign that read, "Community first, we will not be erased." Then she reached into her bag, and pulled out a can of red spray paint. I didn't wait. I called the sheriff. They caught her 10 minutes later, crouched behind my compost bin, trying to change out of her jacket. She claimed she was on a community inspection mission. The deputies didn't buy it. The arrest made the morning news. Karen Langford, former HOA president, accused of trespassing, vandalism, and filing false zoning claims. They showed her mugshot right under mine, smiling on the dock, arms crossed, bare in the background. The caption read, "Property lines and pride, a county divided." I didn't gloat. Okay, maybe a little. But I knew this was more than just victory. This was a turning point. For every neighbor who'd been bullied by her clipboard, for every quiet homeowner steamrolled by invented bylaws, this was justice. And yet, one thing still bothered me. If Karen was out, and the HOA was unraveling, who was suddenly paying for a new road that showed up on the south edge of my land? Why had 3 separate contractors called me asking about permits I never applied for? Because as it turned out, Karen was just the beginning. There was someone bigger behind it all. 3 days after Karen's arrest, I received a letter by certified mail. No return address. Inside was a single typed sentence. The county may respect your land, Mr. Maddox, but the market doesn't. And underneath it, a map. It wasn't from the HOA. It wasn't county issued. It was a commercial rendering, complete with logos, elevation drawings, and sleek digital models of a place called Blackwood Shores Luxury Eco-Community. At the bottom, in fine print, Development Plan Phase 1, pending acquisition approvals. Phase 1? I opened my laptop and started digging. Turns out, 3 weeks earlier, while Karen was busy trying to repurpose my boat dock into a yoga pier, a private firm out of Atlanta had quietly purchased 280 acres bordering my southern property line. The company? Belgrave Holdings. A name that sounded like a trust fund and a threat all at once. They weren't just building homes. They were planning a full eco-resort. Think glass villas. Curated walking trails. Electric boat rentals. And right in the center of it all, my lake. According to their plan, the water was labeled Shared Community Feature. My name didn't appear once. I forwarded the map to Alexis, my lawyer. Her response was immediate and to the point. These people aren't playing HOA games. They're building an empire. And they think you're in the way. So I did what any landowner with a spine and a folder full of deeds would do, I got loud. That night, I posted the map on the same HOA message board Karen used to terrorize residents. I tagged local reporters. I even made a short video from my dock, holding the map up to the camera. This is your lake. This is your property line. And this, I pointed at the shimmering water behind me, is what happens when developers think silence means surrender. The video went viral. Again. And that's when I got the phone call. Block number. Smooth voice. Southern drawl so thick it might have been piped in. Mr. Maddox, this is Andrew Belgrave. I believe we have mutual interests in Blackwood County. I said nothing. I'd like to propose a sit-down. Nothing formal. Just gentlemen discussing opportunity. Is this about your lake theft plan? He chuckled. I prefer the term shared vision. See, people want experiences now. Lakeside brunches. Guided paddleboard tours. A place to charge their Teslas while sipping ethically sourced lattes. You've got water. We've got capital. Let's not fight gravity. You want to rent my lake? Oh no, he said. We'd like to buy it. I laughed. One of those deep, bitter laughs that comes from too many years of watching the powerful assume you're for sale. You couldn't afford it. There was a pause. Then, everyone has a number, Mr. Maddox. Especially when they're alone. He hung up. That was his mistake. Because I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The video had stirred something in Blackwood. My inbox flooded with support. Old-timers. New families. Even former HOA loyalists who'd once tiptoed past Karen's clipboard. They all wanted in. Wanted to help. Wanted to push back. And that's when I got the idea. A counterplan. If Belgrave Holdings wanted to build a resort, then I was going to build a sanctuary. I called in favors. Set up meetings with conservation nonprofits. Found a local tribe with ancestral claims to parts of the forest line. Drafted proposals for a land trust. Began legal proceedings to designate large swaths of my land, including the lake, as protected natural habitat. The kicker? Once that status was confirmed, it would override all adjacent zoning plans, freeze development permits, and effectively lock Belgrave Holdings out of 60% of their proposed infrastructure. In other words, checkmate. But they didn't go down easy. That weekend, I found drones flying over my property. Surveyors parked in unmarked trucks at the edge of my gravel road. One night, I came home to find my gate unlocked, a single-tire track curving toward the tree line and back. I checked my cameras. Someone had tried to sneak in from the south trail, probably to look for access points. But Bear had caught wind of them. My lazy old retriever chased them right off with a bark that echoed off the trees like a gunshot. Good boy. And yet, something felt off. Too quiet. Too strategic. Like someone was waiting. Then, on a foggy Tuesday morning, the bomb dropped. Belgrave Holdings filed an emergency injunction in district court, claiming that I was illegally hoarding natural resources and intentionally obstructing regional economic development. In plain English, they accused me of being a bottleneck to community progress. The court date? 1 week. It was all hands on deck now. Because if they won, I'd be forced to open access to my lake, not just to them, but to anyone they claimed as a stakeholder. But I had one last card to play. Something buried deep in the county archives. Something only Alexis and I had found. And in part 5, we bring that final weapon to court. A clause that no one remembered. But one that Belgrave would never recover from. Courtrooms smell like paper and consequence. I'd been there before, property disputes, land transfers, the occasional title defense. But this wasn't a typical zoning squabble. This was a siege. One developer. One lake. One man they couldn't buy. And one forgotten clause that could end it all. The courtroom was packed. Press in the back row. HOA members in the gallery. Even a few county officials I'd never seen leave their offices. Karen Langford was there too, not on the stand, not called as a witness, but seated dead center with a scarf pulled up to her chin like she thought hiding her neck might shield her reputation. At the front, Belgrave Holdings, flanked by 2 high-powered attorneys in matching blue suits, and me, just a man in boots and a leather folder, sitting beside Alexis, who looked like a wolf in pearls. The judge entered. Gavel down. Statements began. Belgrave's side was polished. Clean. They argued community development. Economic benefit. Tax expansion. They painted me as a stubborn recluse hoarding resources. One attorney even said I was emotionally attached to an inefficient use of geographic value. Alexis leaned over and whispered, "That's legalese for he won't sell us his pond." Then came our turn. Alexis stood. Calm. Measured. But her words were surgical. She presented the deeds. The survey records. The tax filings. Everything clean, documented, bulletproof. But it was what she said next that dropped the room into silence. "Your Honor," she said, lifting a yellowed piece of paper from our folder, "we'd like to introduce Exhibit G, the original land trust charter for the Blackwood Timber region, dated 1965. The Belgrave attorneys perked up, confused. "This document," she continued, "filed with the county 60 years ago, contains a preservation clause triggered automatically when development exceeds 250 acres within a contiguous forest lake perimeter." She held it up. "And Belgrave Holdings, as of last week's purchase, now controls 283. The judge blinked. "You're saying this clause restricts further development once that limit is passed?" "Yes," Alexis replied. And per Section 7, all bodies of water within the trust perimeter revert to natural preserve status, to be managed by the nearest legacy landowner. She turned. Mr. Maddox. My heart kicked once in my chest. I knew he had the claws. But I hadn't let myself hope. Not until now. Belgrave's lead attorney stood up so fast he knocked over his briefcase. Papers spilled across the table. He started objecting, citing procedural delays, outdated language, everything he could throw at the wall. But the judge raised his hand. I've reviewed the clause, he said, adjusting his glasses. And while obscure, it's binding. The lake is protected. Access is revoked. Belgrave Holdings, you are hereby enjoined from developing or utilizing the lakefront or adjacent structures. A beat. Then he added, furthermore, I advise your firm to review zoning obligations more carefully before threatening a private citizen with civil action. It was over. Not with a bang. Not with a brawl. But with a clause written by my grandfather's generation, men who understood that land wasn't just a possession. It was a legacy. I stood outside the courthouse, blinking in the sunlight, as reporters swarmed. I answered a few questions. Smiled. Patted Bear on the head when he trotted over from my truck. But what really made it worth it? Karen. She walked out the side entrance, avoiding cameras, muttering to herself. I caught her eye. She looked like someone trying to remember what power felt like. You lost, she hissed. I shrugged. You never had anything to begin with. That night, I held a barbecue by the lake. Neighbors came. People I barely knew brought pie, kids, dogs, guitars. Someone hung string lights along the dock. Bear swam after dragonflies. And for the first time in months, the lake felt like it was ours again, not just mine. The HOA? They're reorganizing. Karen's permanently banned from serving in any capacity. The board offered to formally exempt my property from all future zoning debates. I declined. I told them I wasn't interested in paperwork anymore. Because ownership isn't about paper. It's about standing your ground when no one else will.